You know, as we get ready to move into a new year, I always like to take this time to kind of look back and reflect on the previous year and think about all the things that we have accomplished over this past year, and also begin to make plans for the new year and think about things that we want to tweak and things we want to improve as we move forward. And one area that a lot of therapists struggle with is just having a website that is performing like it should be performing. You know, that's not getting the traffic that they want. Or maybe you just don't have a website at all yet. Well, the solution to that is Brighter Vision. Brighter Vision is absolutely the premier web design and branding solution for therapists. And if you'd like to get 1 month free, go over to practiceoftherapy.com/brightervision and check them out today. They absolutely will do a great job for you and help you build a website that represents who you are and will help you bring in the referrals you need. This is the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. This is session number 61 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, folks. I'm Gordon Brewer, and I'm glad you're here listening to the podcast. This is kind of a little bit of a milestone for me, and that this will actually be the last podcast I do in 2018. At least that's the plan so far. As you're listening to this, it's just 1 week before Christmas, and so I'm going to wind things down for this year and get ready for the new year. And I hope you're doing the same in your own practice and all that you're doing. You know, as I said in the intro and where I talked about Brighter Vision, I have been really thinking a lot about what has happened in this past year. I know just with the podcast, I've hit several milestones and was looking at those analytics and those statistics about the podcast online. So far, we've had close to 17,000 downloads of the podcast. And on average, we're getting about 2,000 downloads a month, which I'm just blown away by that, considering that I started at zero just a little over a year ago. And I'm just so thankful for those of you out there that are listening to the podcast and that you tune in each week and that you subscribe to the podcast. And I really do appreciate the fact that you're listening to this content, and hopefully, as I always say, hopefully it's useful to you and you're finding it helpful in your journey in private practice. You know, this past week, or actually this week, tomorrow, as I'm recording this, tomorrow I'm excited because I'm going to be doing a staff retreat day for my staff here at Kingsport Counseling Associates. We're going to take some time off and go spend the day away from the office over at a local coffee shop here in town. Hibbert Davis Urban Brews is the name of the place. Just a little shout out to them. They've got a great little space to meet in, and we're going to be taking time away from the office and spend some time planning for the new year and reflecting on things that have happened over this past year. I try to do that, change it around every year a little bit. Sometimes we just go out to dinner somewhere as a staff, but this year we're going to do kind of some planning, and I'm excited about that. I've got 2 new staff people joining me this year. We're expanding here at Kingsport Counseling, and I've got Kelly and Amanda who are joining the staff, and I'm so excited to have them on and joining us as we grow as an organization and as a practice. I've also got plans in this new year, and I'm going to say it out loud, so that'll kind of hold me to it, of expanding the practice into maybe another location, adding an additional office in one of the neighboring towns. So we'll keep your fingers crossed around that, and I'll keep you informed in that journey. The podcast, my intent in doing this podcast since I started it is to just really share people's stories and share resources in a way that we can all kind of listen in and learn from. You know, one of the things that I just absolutely love in doing this podcast is hearing how other people have have tackled this whole private practice endeavor and become entrepreneurs and learned how to run a business and all that sort of thing. And I learned so much from the folks that I've had on the podcast, and also just being able to share those resources, like Practice Solutions and Brighter Vision. And we're also going to be, we're partnering also this next year with Therapy Notes. And one of the things that I've done as part of my growth in my own practice is I'm making a switch and starting to use Therapy Notes, and I'm also using Practice Solutions. So that's one of the reasons I like to endorse them, is because I know who they are, and I know that they're reliable, and I can trust them, and want to be able to recommend just resources that I trust. And so that's the way I'd like to do it. So, but anyway, as I said, we're winding down for the year, and this will be the last episode of 2018, and looking forward to lots of great things ahead. I've already got some guests lined up for the new year, and going to be recording those episodes as we move forward. Got Amanda Patterson coming probably next towards the first of the year. And Amanda is another private practice owner and consultant. And Amanda was with me in the Practicap conference. She and I did a roundtable together. And so looking forward to Amanda being on the podcast, and you all getting to hear her story and just all the great things that she's doing. This week's episode is really a great way for me to kind of end the year, because I'm going to be talking about a specific niche. And my guest today is a person that's been on the podcast before, Cecilia Briseno. And Cecilia is located in the Waco, Texas area, but she has started a very unique niche in that she does immigration evaluations. And Cecilia is a social worker and was called on by a friend or an attorney, and I'm going to let her tell the full story in this interview, but somebody that was interested in helping someone do an evaluation to help them with their immigration process. And so she's developed a whole niche around that. And so I'm going to let her tell that story, and so glad to have back with me Cecilia Briseno. So without further ado, here is Cecilia Briseno. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Practice of Therapy podcast. I'm so happy to have today a repeat guest. I'm happy to have my friend Cecilia Briseno back with me. And Cecilia and I have gotten to know each other much better over this past year. And we got to spend some time together at a live event that our friend Joe Sanok put on, and got to spend some time getting to know Cecilia. And I wanted to have Cecilia back on the podcast because she's got some really interesting stuff that she's doing now, and particularly helping other therapists learn how to develop a specific niche. And that niche is doing immigration evaluation. So Cecilia, welcome back to the Practice of Therapy podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be there. Happy to be here. And it's been great to get to know you better. Yes,
it's been fun. It has been fun. So tell folks a little more, for maybe the folks that hadn't listened to the earlier episode that you were on, tell folks a little more about yourself and your private practice journey and kind of how you've landed where you are now.
Sure. So I am actually in Texas. I'm in Arlington, Texas, in between Dallas and Fort Worth, close to Cowboy Stadium. And so I, went to grad school here and grew up here. So I started my practice shortly after getting my LCSW, and really quickly after that, it feels like it was like the next day, but maybe it was a couple of months. I got a call from a immigration attorney that was just down the street from me, and wanted to know if I could do an immigration evaluation. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know anything about that. So I told him I would be happy to once I figured out it was something that I could do with my license, I told him I would be happy to try, if he was willing to work with me. And he was very kind and worked with me. So I started doing that, and just over time, he kept sending more. And then, people would reach out to me and ask me if I could do them. And then, it just kind of grew. And so I've been doing them for almost 10 years now. 2019
Wow.
2018 actually was 10 years. So yeah, it's crazy how time just flies when you're doing something you love, but I've really enjoyed it. And then over the last couple of years, I've realized, okay, I've kind of figured out how to do this in a way that works, and how to grow my practice in a way that I'm able to offer the service to a lot of immigrants in the area. And so I've started to train other clinicians on how to do this evaluation, because that was one of the things I looked for training, and I couldn't find anything. There was nothing out there to teach clinicians how to do these evaluations. So it was trial and error. And then over time, I figured it out. And so now I'm training other clinicians to do it, which is exciting.
Yeah, and we're going to talk some more about that, because you've launched kind of a new endeavor with doing some immigration evaluation boot camps, where it's a real intensive kind of training where people can come and learn how to do that. So, yeah.
Yes.
Excited.
Yes, it is pretty intense, but it's fun. I enjoy it.
Right. So if someone were thinking about doing this, what would be, I guess maybe what are some things that most people don't recognize about doing this type of evaluation? I know before we started recording, one of the things you were mentioning was that there's like 5 different types of evaluations you can do. Can you maybe share a little bit of I'm sure there's not nearly enough time to obviously teach what you teach, but could you give us an overview of what those different what is involved in an immigration evaluation?
Sure, absolutely. So over time in doing these evaluations, I realized that there were different kinds, and so slowly but surely I started adding those to my practice as well. So the main one is called an I-601 extreme hardship waiver. That would be for a resident or citizen that is married to an undocumented person. So the undocumented person, when they're trying to get legalized, they typically have to return to their home country for 10 years. And so with that process, obviously, it creates an extreme amount of hardship for the resident or citizen who's married to them. And, a lot of times in the cases that I work with, the undocumented person is the one that's supporting the family. And so there's all different kinds of situations, but that is what I, as a clinician, am doing in those cases, is trying to figure out what is the hardship it will create on the resident or citizen. What has it already created, the hardship that's already been created, and then what would happen if that undocumented spouse would return to their home country. So a lot of times it would be like the resident or citizen would have to begin working again. So that might mean if they're a stay-at-home mom, or for example, a stay-at-home mom, then they would have to put their child in childcare. So that adds a large expense to their family. If their child has special needs, or if they're sick themselves and they need help, those are the types of situations. Of course, there's many, and every situation is different. And that's kind of the art of being able to assess really well, is to figure out what those hardships are, and then to highlight those in the evaluation.
Right. Yeah. So that's is that the one that you see the most? People seeking that hardship evaluation?
Yes, absolutely. So I kind of talk about, in my trainings or my boot camp, I talked about kind of the typical situation, and that would be the I-601 extreme hardship waiver. And typically, at least here in Texas, it is the man that's undocumented, the wife that is a resident or citizen, and usually they have young kids, and so that's obviously a huge factor to consider. Right. So that's kind of like the normal situation, but there's all different kinds, and the parents can request on behalf of their children can request on behalf of their parents. So there's different types of situations, but the typical would be for a spouse to request for their undocumented spouse.
Right. So with that type of evaluation, what's kind of the I'm assuming there's some sort of report that you have to do and that sort of thing. Did you find, was that I guess a format for that, or is that just something that you had to figure out on your own?
I kind of figured it out on my own a little bit with the immigration attorney's help. And every attorney wants something just a little bit different. And so it's funny how, one attorney will say, I need you to do it this way. And then the next attorney will say, I need you to do it this way. And they're completely contrary to each other. Okay. So it kind of makes me laugh because I'm like, which one is effective? But, if that's how they want it, and I'm fine to do it like that. So yeah, I kind of the way that I structure it is just by different headings and kind of do an overview of the work that we've done together as far as why we've been working together and the number of sessions we had and that type of thing. And then going into their background and their relationship and then their educational history, just kind of hitting the different bullet points. And really the focus of it is to address their emotional status. So that is really where the meat of the information is for the evaluation. But yes, there is kind of a format that I use. And as part of the training in the boot camp, they receive copies or sample evaluations for the different types of evaluations so that they can kind of go to it and say, okay, this is if I'm struggling, I can kind of have an idea as to what it should look like. Right. So that's something that I was asked to provide, and I'm happy to do that because it sounds like it's been very helpful to the different clinicians.
Right. So if somebody were interested in getting started with doing immigration evaluations, what's the starting place for that? I would think too that in different parts of the country there's a greater need than others.
Yes, definitely. So, anywhere that hits a border is going to be an area that you're probably going to have an increased number of people needing these evaluations. So that's kind of why I'm planning my 2019 training dates and locations based off of that, because I've already received feedback from clinicians in those areas that are kind of on the border or areas where there's more immigrants, that they're the ones that are needing it. They don't, there's not a lot of immigrants needing the service and not enough clinicians that really know what they're doing in providing the service.
Right. So what are some of the things you teach in your courses, and what can people expect?
Sure. So I have an e-course, and really with the e-course, and that is at www.hardshipevaluationtraining.com, and that's where you can get information about that. Right now I have a $250 off for anyone that's learning about this through this podcast. Thank you, Gordon.
Okay, sure.
So you can just do discount code Gordon to get a discount on that.
Okay.
But that training is really focuses on that extreme hardship waiver. And so it's about 4 hours long. And I provide other documents and things like that. But the boot camp is 2 full days it's an intense training. It's going over 5 different types of evaluations that we can do as mental health clinicians. You have to be independently licensed. And so if you're an independently licensed clinician and if you're interested in working with this population, or if you're bilingual, that's a huge added bonus.
Right.
So it's 2 full days, and in there we go through all different things. We talk about the intake calls. Well, we go over the different types of cases, the intake calls, the all the information and paperwork you need to go through in the first session, the different sessions and the questions that you would ask them. How the interview changes with the different types of evaluations. And then we also talked about the format of the evaluations and how to communicate with the attorneys and build those relationships. And then we also talked about other things such as like pricing and the office space and other practice considerations, so that if you're really wanting to gear your practice towards working with immigrants, the way that you can set yourself up in your practice that's going to be most conducive to working with these clients. And so that's, to me, one of the biggest benefits of this training that I offer, is that it's not just, okay, this is what you need to have. These are the questions you need to ask, or how to structure the evaluation. It's kind of everything that you need to know, from the working with the attorneys to the first phone call to the follow-up and the reasons that they would get back with you and need more services, and how to structure that, and everything, the paperwork that you'll need, all of it, everything that you would need. And so my goal is, and what I kind of pride myself on, is they can finish the boot camp and the next day they're able to start offering the service.
Wow.
And so it's, to me, it's really beneficial for that reason.
Right. So what sort of clinicians have you found are really well suited to, I think about this as a niche, and I also think about the fact that, obviously I would think someone would need to have a passion for this particular issue. Is going to be helpful. But what are some other things that you have found, sort of what type of clinician or what type of practice would be well suited for this niche? Does that question make sense?
I think so. Like, what maybe are some of the qualities that the clinicians might have that would make them work well with this population or do this work? Yeah, definitely. That's actually a good question. I've never been asked that. I would say someone that is flexible. Because working with these clinicians, with this population, a lot of times they are in a really tough place. They're really struggling. And so they need flexibility as far as like scheduling, or just the time frame that they're needing to work with. Like, there's just a lot of times they're coming in just really confused, really overwhelmed. And really, we need to be very compassionate and really understanding of the situation that they're in. They're facing, a client could come in, or is typically coming in, just petrified at the idea of their husband leaving for 10 years. Like, how do you prepare for that? They're talking, a lot about, there's just so many unknowns and I don't know how to handle it. And here I'm, we're trying to save money. We're trying to pay for all these expenses. We don't know how to talk to our kids about this. A lot of times they're really embarrassed or not getting a lot of support, when they do tell people about it. So a lot of times they don't talk to anyone else about it. They're just dealing with it within the two of them. And so being very compassionate, being very flexible, I think are some of the biggest factors or qualities. I think people that are used to working with families do really well with this because, although we are focusing on the resident or citizen, you learn very quickly that even though you have to, for the evaluation purposes, only focus on that resident or citizen, everything that's happening in that family affects the resident or citizen. So, I always talk with the spouse, I always talk with the children, because the way that they're handling this or the things that they're going through directly impact my client. And so I always interview everyone in the family if possible. It's not always possible. But I'm able to use that information in the evaluation by spinning it on how it's affecting my client. So working with families is definitely beneficial. I would say that those are probably the biggest things. Did that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it did. And I guess, it kind of leads into another question, just thinking about people, clinicians, especially getting paid for these services. What have you found has worked well with that? Because I might be assuming wrong, that I'm assuming that this type of evaluation wouldn't necessarily be billable to insurance. And so in that, am I wrong about that? Or, yeah. And so,
no, that's correct.
Yeah. And so I think about, maybe clinicians, this particular population, maybe some of them struggling with poverty, that kind of thing. What have you found as a kind of a workaround with that for clinicians?
I'll just make this note real quick that most clients that reach out to me don't even really have insurance. So that's not really usually an issue is the insurance part of it and the fact that you can't bill for it. I'm private pay only, so I couldn't do it if I wanted to, but that really isn't an issue. And they realize that most clients or potential clients realize that they're going to pay out of pocket for this. A lot of times they've reached out to a number of different clinicians, or if the wonderful thing about working with attorneys is they'll say, go to this person. I've worked with her for a long time and she's good and she's reasonably priced compared to other people. And so they'll just call, and because the attorney knows that, my practice is reasonably priced, that we, have reasonable prices. They believe, they trust that, and they come in just like, okay, just tell me what I need to do. And so, you can price it however you want to, obviously. There's some clinicians that charge quite a bit more than I would ever charge. And I charge on the lower end just because this is kind of a mission for me. This is kind of something I believe very strongly in this. And I think I told you about kind of a little bit about my story in the last podcast, or the last interview I did with you. So I charge a little bit less because I want this to be beneficial and something that they can afford. Right. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. I think, and I think that kind of goes back to a person having the heart for it. I mean, I'm kind of the philosophy and mindset that if we do the right things and just treat people with dignity and compassion, that will, somehow or another, that'll come back to us. And I think that's probably very true. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And I definitely agree with that. And I'm definitely of that same philosophy. I think that the clients that I tell people, I do clinical supervision as well. And I always tell my supervisees, your clients know if you have their best interest in mind. They know if you're just coming here because you want to get paid. They understand that, or they understand that you're there and you are warm and you're welcoming and you're understanding and you're really wanting to work with them and understand their situation. They can read right through all of that.
Yeah.
And so if they see that you are all of those things, that you are really wanting to work with them, and that you're doing this because it's a passion for you, they're going to work with you. They're going to work with you with the price. They're going to work with you with the timing. They're going to be so much easier to work with as well if you go into it because you're wanting to do this and you're really wanting to serve this population. Yeah. So to me, that is a huge factor is, are you doing this because you want a paycheck? Or are you doing because you feel like, okay, I can charge them and they're in a bad situation and, they're going to pay it because they have to? Or are you doing this because you're passionate about and you really want to help people that are in need, because people are really in need?
Right. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think people know when you're being genuine or not. That's for sure.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let me backtrack just a little bit, because there was something you said that I'm sure people are maybe curious about. You mentioned that there were like 5 different types of evaluations. Can you tell us, maybe tell kind of a thumbnail of each one and how they're different?
Sure. Sure. So I've already explained the extreme hardship waiver. The next one, obviously in no particular order, is the U visa. And the U visa is a case where the undocumented person was a victim of a crime here in the United States. Okay. So they're needing to stay here for a number of reasons, to be able to help with the criminal investigation, and then also to deal with the trauma that they've experienced from that crime. Mm-hmm. So that's the U visa. The next one is VAWA, and that is for victims of domestic violence. And a lot of times in those situations, the abuser is not willing to help the undocumented person to fix their papers. Asylum is another case. The asylum cases are another one. So obviously that's when they're fleeing their country for reasons of persecution. Mm-hmm. And so that would be another one. And then cancellation of removal cases. And those situations are where they already have orders to leave the country, that they're being deported. And so it's kind of a time sensitive situation, but they are trying to explain. It's really similar actually to the extreme hardship waiver, because you're trying to explain what would be the repercussions of them having to leave. How would it affect their family? What would it mean if they were going back to the country? So you're more focused on your client, which is the undocumented person, but it's a lot of the same type of information.
Right. Yeah. And, I'm curious, have you found, without getting too much into politics, have you found that with the current political climate, it's more difficult with these evaluations to kind of prove a person's need than it has been in the past?
There's definitely more hoops to jump through, and it's changing a lot more quickly. Mm-hmm. So, I found that with the attorneys, they're saying, now they're wanting this, or, now because of this, we're needing you to go back and change this information, or we need it to be more recent, so you need to see them more often, or things like that. So yes, it has been more difficult. And it was interesting because for a while around a certain event, there was a decrease in people coming for these evaluations. And I think it was just based out of fear.
Right.
And so, but then after some time, it was like, okay, we need to get going with this. If we're going to do this, people are getting deported and getting stopped, and, there's been all kinds of raids. Okay, we need to get this done. And so then there was kind of an influx of people trying to get to fix their papers. So, and then it was also interesting because I just had clients that would come to me, that would just come and see me, not even knowing that I did this work. Out of fear, they were like, I'm just, with the political climate the way it is, I'm scared to leave my house. I'm scared for my husband to leave the house. My kids are scared to go to school. And they came just because of anxiety, just with everything that was going on. And in talking, I would explain to them what I did. And they were like, oh, thank goodness. Like, it's so nice to talk to someone that understands. And let me talk to my attorney and see if, you can help us. So it has been definitely very interesting to do this work with the way that things are right now. Right.
Well, it's very, I think a big part of what we do, regardless of our licensure. I tend to think of advocacy work being done more by social workers, but that's not always the case. But I think it's certainly needed work, and I think it's very noble work, and being able to reach out and help people in need, and that just, fits with my own thoughts and mindset and whatever. So, yeah.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
yes. And I am actually a social worker. I do it differently, but yes, I love it. And I loved that. I feel like I'm giving back while I'm also able to help contribute to my family and to, work part-time hours so that I can be with my kids more and things like that. It's kind of the best of all the worlds, I feel like. I mean, it's definitely a challenge. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it has been really nice to be able to feel like I'm giving back and doing work that I feel is very important, but also to be able to kind of make a living at the same time. I wish I could do it all for free. I mean, that would be ideal. Right. But I've been able to make a living off of doing this work that I love and I'm very passionate about. And so I feel very lucky to do that.
Yeah, yeah. So before I forget, let's tell people about the boot camps you're doing and the trainings you've got coming up and this coming year.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. So I've been working, I think we're all kind of in the same boat as, having private practices and having all these extra things that we're passionate about trying to do. So I've been setting up my schedule for 2019 and really kind of working on that, which is great and exciting. So I'm going to be in different cities, probably one city every other month. In 2019, I'm going to kind of hit the big cities, New York City. I'll probably go back to Chicago. The LA area is going to be the first place I hit. So I'm trying to think of where else I will be. Yeah. I think I'll be in Washington, D.C., and then I'm going to do one here in Texas, probably in South Texas. Okay. You can reach me or find me at immigrationevaluationbootcamp.com. And I'm in the process of getting my website set up for that, but there's a form that you can fill out to get more information, and I'll reach back out to you. It also has a link to where you can go and see more information through Eventbrite. So I would love to give you more information and see if it would be a fit. I'm going to be doing calls with people that are interested to see if this boot camp, because it is a financial investment, but I want to be able to talk to each person and just make sure it's something that will work well within their practice and what they're trying to do. And then, like I said, it's the 2 days of the boot camp, which is pretty intense, but a lot of information. But I've been told by other people, other clinicians that went through it, that it's a lot, but it's manageable. And so, but some of the feedback that I got is that it would be nice to have follow-up support. So as part of the boot camp, there will be 5 months of support. So that would be through like a Q&A session every month that you can, log into and get some support, ask questions, hear the struggles that other people are having, and, we can all brainstorm together. And so that it's kind of like a 6-month package. So if you're interested, I would love to speak with you. And it's, I think it's awesome. So I'm really excited.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting stuff. And what was fun for me is that I know I think I was there in kind of the beginning stages of when you started taking this idea and running with it. And what I love is that you've just jumped in there and done it and doing these trainings. And I'm sure they're going to be very well received. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of interest in it.
Oh, thank you, Gordon. I appreciate your support and your help. Yeah. I've loved being able to talk to you on your podcast, and then I listen to your podcast just anyway. So thank you so much for all that you do.
Thanks.
Willing to help me.
Yeah, yeah. So, Cecilia, tell folks about, you mentioned your website, and repeat that again. It's immigration.
Sure. So yes, it's immigrationevaluationbootcamp.com. There's kind of no way to shorten. You have to kind of say immigration evaluations because there's kind of no way around it. But so it's immigrationevaluationbootcamp.com. And then for the e-course, if you're interested in that, you don't feel like, you have the time or desire to go through the whole boot camp, you can do the e-course, and that is hardshipevaluationtraining.com.
Okay, and we'll be sure to put that in those links in the show notes, and so that people can get in touch with you and find out more about all of that. So, well, Cecilia, I want to be mindful of your time, and I really do appreciate you coming back on the podcast and us finally getting a date together. I know we've just had the scheduling glitches all over the place, but it finally worked out, and so glad you're able to join me again. So
thank you so much for having me on and being patient with me in my busy schedule.
Yeah, and I hope you have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you. You too. You and your family.
Yes.
Thanks.
So thanks again, Cecilia.
Okay. Take care. Thanks.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, I hope that's given you some ideas about some potential niches for you to explore, and maybe some additional services you can add to your practice depending on where you're located. Again, I'm so grateful to Cecilia for having joined me again on the podcast, and do check out her resources. I'll have those in the show notes and give you links to her stuff and the training that she's putting on how to do immigration evaluations. So, folks, I do hope that you have the happiest of holidays, and I hope that your Christmas is a good one if you celebrate Christmas. And I look forward to talking to you and being with you in the new year. I've got lots of exciting stuff coming down the pike, and I'm going to keep you informed. And one thing in particular is I've got that financial course, Money Matters course, that's coming up. And if you'll go over to practiceoftherapy.com/finance course, that'll get you to the page where you can get the free financial analysis guide, and also get you on the list to make sure you find out more about the Money Matters course when it's ready to release. And so wanted to mention that. That's another exciting thing that's coming up this year. And do check out the folks over at Brighter Vision. Brighter Vision is the premier website building, web design, and branding experts for our industry, for therapists and counselors, and I can highly recommend them. Perry and his team have just do a wonderful job in helping people with their websites. And you can get to that at practiceoftherapy.com/brightervision. And if you go through that link, you'll be able to sign up and get 1 month free of their services. So take care, folks. Have a happy holiday and a happy new year. And I wish you all the best in 2019. You have been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. If you haven't already, please sign up to receive the free private practice startup guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.